Okay, so I want to just take a moment. We're going to sort of pause. I want to kind of explain to you what is happening in your scene and break down what the camera view is doing. And then we're going to go back and look at, if we've mapped performance, like physical change, like key drawings, and we've worked out key frames in terms of movement or motion, we need to look at how do we go beyond a line drawing. Because this is kind of a slightly crappy piece of line art. We need something that's more refined. Content aside, I think we can all agree there's a distinct difference between what your squid and my squid and like Big Mouth, yeah? In terms of render, in terms of finish. So we need to kind of go back slightly and go, right, we've got the animation, let's start looking at finish. So, first things first, the camera view. So the camera view that we're working in is one of two areas where drawings or draw material is created in Harmony, okay? The first one is the camera view, the second one is the drawing view. And one of the most common mistakes I've seen from students in the past when they're learning Harmony and they're starting to animate is they'll draw something and then they'll go to the next frame along and be like, I can't see what I was just drawing. Onion skin doesn't work, or my drawing's not playing back. Why is nothing working? 9 times out of 10 is because they're drawing in the drawing view and not in the camera view. The camera view is your animation. It is the stage in which your content exists and takes place. The best way to think about the drawing view, so we can see it here, this view, the drawing view is the sketchbook that contains all of your artwork. Okay, a sketchbook is not an animation. An animation is an animation. And you'll see that in just the complete absence of playback. So this is me playing, you see that I was playing the timeline in drawing view, nothing happens, okay, because it is not related to the timeline. The two things do not work together. But the camera view itself is also slightly deceptive. I know that looks weird. It does look weird for a reason. It's because I disconnected the movement. Don't freak out. I'll show you how to put it back in a second. But the camera view is quite literally that. It is a camera. All right? It is not a flat plane. It's not a block of grey that you're animating on top of. You are using a physical camera inside a three-dimensional space. The best way to kind of see that space is if you go to the plus up here and select perspective, you can enter perspective view. And in perspective view, you'll be able to see that your animation actually exists inside a three-dimensional space. Now, you use command and option to like rotate the screen, yeah, the light box kind of view. If you use command and option here and click and drag, you can actually rotate in a 3D space. And you can see that your objects exist on an X, Y, and Z axis. So when we think, like I said, Maya, think Maya, like you can actually put a camera in this and shoot from a very specific angle. You can even animate the camera like you would in Maya and like you can now do in After Effects to a lesser extent to capture the right composition for the performance that you're animating. So that's really important to remember that though it feels flat, we are working inside a three-dimensional space. The brilliance of that is that you can model stuff in Studio Max or in Maya, export the FBX files, and import them straight into Harmony's stage. So you can animate, you can bring in 3D assets and do hard surface like object animation with them, or you can use them to build the environment in which your animation takes place. You can also animate on a Z-axis. You must have done like some animation tasks like bouncing ball or pendulum or whatever other nonsense, where you have to make something get bigger and smaller. Yeah? You don't have to fake that in Harmony. You can actually move it on a Z-axis and it will get bigger because it's getting closer to the camera. So you've got that extra layer of control where we can animate across that axis. The first step for that, just very quickly, I'm just going to reconnect my peg. There we go. So the animation never went away. But in perspective view, if I double click on my peg's little symbol just here, I can enable 3D. And what that means is that then when I'm animating, I can animate across a Z-axis as well. So if I just pull this out and say, right, at this point in time, it actually moves on a Z-axis. So it's not just animating on X, Y, and Z axis, but it's animating on Z axis. You'll be able to see that in the camera. Yes, you see how it's actually getting closer or further away. So we have the ability to do 3D animation. So you double click on the symbol of the peg to bring up all the peg's options, one of which includes this enable 3D function.
Sorry, do you know how to open the 3D view?
Oh, how to open perspective is up here. So just hit plus and select perspective, which is this view. So yeah, just important to remember, we're working inside a 3D space. The other view that we very briefly saw there is the node view, and I will go into that right at the end of this session, just to prepare you for what we do in the next class. But what I want to do for the moment is step backwards, and we need to take a look at how to clean our drawing up. So what I'd like you to do, go back to frame number 1. Let's go into camera view. We're going to go to frame number 1, and we're going to start kind of looking at this drawing. Now I'm hoping that your drawing exists like mine, where it's all separate objects still. So I'm on the drawing layer, and if I draw with my selection tool around each one of these objects, I should be able to isolate them. So don't think about animation anymore, let's go back to drawing. So I've got my selection tool active, so my selection tool's up here. I'm on my first frame on my drawing layer, and I should be able to just select specific pieces of that drawing. What we also need to do at this point in time, in our camera view, is just go to the menu up here, and go to View, and then Show, and make sure Show Strokes is active. So the strokes are the data lines that are effectively the edges of our drawings. So the stroke is the line that connects one drawing to another. Okay, it's what connects lines together. When you cross two drawings over one another, the stroke lines cross as well. And it's those strokes that will help us understand how to start applying colour, gradients even, inside of shapes. So what we're going to do now is we're going to show strokes on, and yours should go like mine, where you can see a blue outline. Yeah, awesome. So now we can start to look at how to manipulate our drawings to make them look a little bit more complete. Can you also just bring up for a second, if you go over to the right hand side, hit the plus and make sure that you can see colour. So colour is just here. Now the animation we've done today, we've worked in one colour so far, okay, which is either will probably be black. If you've got the default settings, you might be in vectorized line. But yeah, we're just in black for the moment. Now, colour in Harmony is a really interesting thing, because each colour, when you're working in vector view, is assigned. And what we mean by that is that if you have used that colour once, it will apply across a time change. So just to give you an example of what I mean, you know how we cut these two? Yeah, so we've got, this is one bit of drawing, but then there's a cut line, and this is a separate bit of drawing, and this is a cut line, and we know that we can erase here, and it won't affect over here, will it? You know, if I start sort of, playing around with this bit of drawing, all of this stuff is safe because of the cut lines. Not for colour though. So if I go, it's black here as you can see, and I've got the black selected. If I go all the way up here to this one, and I take that black and I double click it, and I turn it to blue, not only does it make it blue here, oh, where's it gone? I've lost it. It makes it blue all the way back there as well. So colour, as it's assigned in Harmony when we're working in vector mode, exists across time. It even exists across layers and drawings. Now think about this in terms of animating on long form animation, so an animated TV series as an example. And you've got a colour palette for a specific character. And that character in the episode is going to wear a different colour t-shirt. You don't have to draw a different colour t-shirt. You want to be able to just change the colour palette, knowing that now every piece of animation you've done, where you've used that colour, it will change for you automatically. You don't need to go and recolour frames one at a time. It will do it all for you. It does all the hard work. If you're working on a team project and you've designed a character and you're animating that character that's got a specific set of colours, you can export that colour palette and give it to somebody else to open in their Harmony file. So they're using the exact same colours that you are. Okay? It also means they can open your file and make changes. So they can you can dynamically link colour palettes and object palettes and character palettes. At an advanced level, I'm hoping some of you get on this next year with your final projects, you can even store them on server. So if you store them on a live server space, which is not that difficult to do, we've got the capability to do it here, it means that two different people can work on two different computers on one colour palette in real time. And if one of you changes it, it affects the other person's file in real time. So you can work together to produce whole character sequences and whole pieces of animation. It's really, really important that we understand there's a very distinct difference, though, between the way a vector colour palette works and the way a bitmap colour palette works. So I'm going to set this back to black. What we're now going to do is we're going to set some of the core colours and we're going to start to bring them in. So I'm going to actually, I'm going to take this red, I'm going to turn it to kind of a pale pinky colour. I'm going to rename it pink because that would be sensible. Excellent. And then what I want to do is I actually want to make that pink like the local colour of my squid. But before I can start dumping colour in there, I need to make sure that I've closed all of the stroke lines. Okay, and that there's no gaps in the drawing. So I'm going to zoom in and you'll see pretty quickly whether there's gaps or not. So I'll go to my paint bucket tool. I've got my pink selected. And if I just click, can you see how it's not colouring it in? It's taking issue with that shape. That one's fine. That one's fine, that one's fine, that one's fine. But this one here, there is a problem. So I need to find where the gap is. And it looks like the gap is here. So what I can do, I can select Close Gap tool. Draw a circle around the area that was a problem. Where is it? I think I'm going to have to go in with my black, with my brush, and complete this line. So I'm actually going to go in and refine this line just here. I think that's probably where the gap is coming from. Let's have a look and see if that made a difference. Yeah, so that's where the issue was. Because I didn't have a completed line, I wasn't able to put the colour in where I needed it to go in. So now I can go to my pink, I can drop that in there, and I can start to apply colour. Now, there's some really other cool colour functions that we can start to play with here as well. So one of the things I'm also going to do is that black, which is kind of okay. Like, I haven't got a problem with the black per se. It just doesn't really fit with the pink. So if I use my colour dropper and select the same colour, what I should be able to do, I'm going to get something relatively close. Let's go over here. I want to get something that's kind of close in colour, but not exactly. I want to be a little bit lower in value. Yeah, maybe kind of down here slightly. That's better. So I want a colour that kind of is close, but I still want to be able to see the line art. Yeah, I don't want it to be just a seamless shape. We're going to work with seamless shapes next week. So I've gone for a pink that's just that little bit lower in value, a little bit less saturation. If I hit K, you'll see where I'm at with that. So it's kind of close, but not quite. And I think that will do for the moment. That's not too bad. And you'll see up here, see how the gap wasn't closed on these frames. I need to go in and close these gaps. So I've got some cleaning up to do on my drawing. So I'm going to take a couple of minutes. I'm going to close all these lines. So I'm going to use I can use the close gap tool to just draw lines in. So I can say, look, there's a gap there. And there's a gap there. So that should be enough to now start applying, yeah, the colour that I need to apply. So that should be fine, that should be fine. This one should be okay. See, I've got a gap here as well. I can actually see this gap. If I go to the close gap tool, I can see it there. So I just draw a line across. So what you need to do now, yeah, just move through and start to kind of fill in those gaps. Go. That one's fine. Right, if anyone's got any problems, just give me a shout and I'll come over and take a look. I've got some of my own issues at the moment I'm going to try and fix. Right, folks, if everyone can pause what you're doing, so hopefully hopefully you've got a couple of minutes to start dumping colour into it. So you've started to refine it. What I'd like to go through now is the next layer of refinement. So it's like, okay, I can draw a rough looking squid and then I can dump a bunch of colour into it and it looks better. You know, it looks a bit better, but what about a greater level of refinement? What about actually bringing in a sense of difference between local colour and values, so bringing in light? What about changes to texture? What about even just cleaning lines? You know, and understanding the difference between line and colour and separating the two out. So I'm going to show you how to use the two art layers as they exist in Harmony. And this one's kind of a little bit painful on the brain because it is very counterintuitive, especially if you are a Photoshop kind of person. Okay, Photoshop generally works in the sense that layers occupy physical space, and everything exists because it's locked to a layer. In Harmony, we do have things that are locked to layers, as you've seen, but we also have elements that are locked to functions, and that's what we're going to look at now. So I've taken my squid animation, I've just locked it off for a second, so I've compressed it all down, I've added a little lock button so I don't accidentally draw over it. So I've just got a little bit of space where I can walk you through two very, very different sets of functions. So we're staying inside of vector mode for the moment, but if you can just pause, I'm going to walk you through how we use the repaint tool, how we use the paint behind tool as well. And also, what the hell an art layer is. Okay, because Harmony has art layers as well as layer layers, and they're very, very different things. So you know what the layer layers are. You can see those. They're in the timeline. You know, you can see them vertically. Art layers can be found up here. So when you're in camera view, you have an L and you have a C. That's a line layer and a color layer. If you want to get proper into this, there are also two more, which are underlay and overlay layers, which are awesome. But we're not going to do them today. You know, that's kind of next level stuff. When we've been animating so far, we've been working the line layer. You know, we've just been going, look, we need to know how to move stuff and kind of get our head around the software. What we want to do now is kind of step back a little bit and go, okay, how do we actually create something that has very clear and distinct line art and color art? So in the line layer, we are going to use the pencil tool. And I'm going to show you how the pencil tool behaves slightly differently to the brush tool and how we can get it to work for us. So first things first, I've gone back to having that black as my color, and I'm going to kind of stick with that for the moment. I've got a fresh vector-based layer I've called T1 because I'm going to draw a tentacle. And then inside that layer, I'm on the line art layer. I'm going to go to my pencil tool just over here. And the pencil tool has got some very, very similar functions. You know, it behaves very much the same. I'm just going to turn the strokes off for the moment. It behaves, at first, it seems to behave the same as the brush tool. I'm going to make it a little bit larger, keep that smoothing nice and high. Yes, it behaves very similarly to the brush tool. However, there are some very distinct differences. First off, it has different start, end, and join functionality, so you can taper the ends off or you can keep them really smooth. But there are other differences. So the first big difference, that's a line drawn with the pencil tool. That's a line drawn with the brush tool. We go to the contour editor. When we select the brush, like the paintbrush line, it automatically wants us to change the outside stroke. So it's saying, oh, mate, that's a paint stroke. It means it's a physical blob of space that you want to apply color to because you're painting. So the primary kind of contour editing function would be to change the outside edge. By comparison, if we use the same tool on the pencil tool, the focus instead is on the contour line. Oh, that's line art. You're using the pencil tool to do the outline of a character or a form. So that must mean that you want to get a nice clean handle. So you want to look at the Bezier handles. You want to play around with the overall kind of movement and stroke of the shape. So you can see straight away there's a really big difference between the way the pencil and the brush tool, they work and they have different functions. So what I'm going to do very, very quickly, I'm just going to switch this up. And I'm going to draw, instead of a squid tentacle, I'm just going to draw an octopus tentacle with the pencil tool. So it's going to be something like that, and then it's going to kind of have an end like that. And then I quite like the idea of like having some blobs like this. So there's probably going to be like one there, and a smaller one here, one here. And I'm going to put one there. Yeah, that's not too bad. That's kind of where my head's at. So it's a very different type of shape. Now, if we hit that K button again to show the strokes, you're going to see a slightly different set of behaviours. Oh, don't crash on me. There we go. So I can see the stroke lines of my shapes. I can also go in and start to apply some cuts. So I can see some stuff that I can trim. For example, I'd quite like to trim that line. And I'm going to trim that line and this weird little thing down here. I don't want that. I'm going to trim that line there as well. Might want to zoom in quickly with my cutter tool. That's it. So I'm going to trim that one. I'm going to trim that bit. So I've got a nice clean shape. Now I can't colour my octopus in because I've not got a closed stroke. I haven't got a closed gap. So instead of going to the closed gap tool, I'm going to go to the stroke tool just here. And then I'll zoom in slightly so you can see it a bit clearer. But I'm basically just going to draw in a closed stroke. So I'm going to say, look, that's closed off. The other thing that I want to close is these shapes just here. So I'm going to close those in. And what that's doing, wait, that was a bit crazy. Sorry, I just slipped ever so slightly there. What that close is doing is it's basically creating a barrier through which the art and colour work can be applied, but without actually having to have an outline. And that's the real key to this, is that we can create blocks where colour can be applied, but without having to have outlines around it. And the way that I do that is this little button here. I don't know how well you can read that. It's on your screen. You can hover over it to see it. It says, create colour art from line art. So what it's asking you to do is, what do you want to, you put all these lines in on the line art layer, but would you like to take the strokes and bring those down into the colour art layer? Yes, I would. I would like to bring those lines down, because what that will then enable me to do is to actually start to apply, let's close that one off as well, start to apply colour in a really kind of intelligent way. So yeah, I'm going to click that. Yes, please. There is another version of it somewhere as well. Where is it? I think it might be in the pencil tool settings. Yeah, there it is. There's in the pencil tool, you can actually change it. So it says automatically create color art. That's a really helpful thing to do. So it just flattens. Every time you draw a line with the pencil tool, it sends the stroke to the color art layer. Now, what that means for when we're applying color is if I now go down to the color art layer, first off, it didn't all disappear. If you don't click that button, that convert to color art, when you jump down to the color art layer, all your line art will just go. You just won't be able to see anything. So straight off, by selecting that, it means that when I select this color art layer, I can see stuff. Now I can go in with my paint bucket, and I can now apply, I should be able to apply colors. Why is that one not closed? I've got to close some of these off. I think I was a little bit off on my guesses there. Let's have a look. Oh, come on, really? Look at that. Let's just close these up. Thank you. Look, it's very precise as a tool. Look at that. Right, let's just close these off quickly. That's me working on a tiny screen when I should be focusing with a little bit more attention, a little bit more refinement. So I'm just going to close those off, and then once they're closed, I can start to apply that colour and start to close those off. what I might also do, I'm just going to duplicate this. So I'm going to take that, paste it as go away box. There we go. So I'm going to take this green one and I'm going to lower that value down ever so slightly. And what that will enable me to do, once I've closed this gap, because I can see I've still left gaps in there, that's such a small gap. You know, contour, editor, let's get there. There we go. Oh, it's really fussy today. Normally it just kind of completes the line for you. I might have to turn that functionality off. Might what slowed it down. There we go. So now I can start to bring those colours in, connect them up really nicely. I'm going to close that gap as well. That's nice and closed. To make sure it's closed at the other end. I'm just whizzing. You can see I'm getting really rough and ready with that as well. I'm not dancing around it. I'm just trying to close them as quickly as possible. Close that one for me, and let's check this one. Close that. That's definitely closed. Yeah, that one's a bit janky, but it's closed. So I go back in with the pink. I should be able to drop into these now. Ooh. So there's a gap here that it's helped me identify. Let's see if I can spot it though. It can't be that, surely. When in doubt, draw a circle around it. Yeah, there we go. So I'm just going in, trying to find where is it potentially leaving gaps. Just try and lock them off as best as I can. Yeah, there we go. That'll do. So you can see now if I turn the strokes off, now that's a little bit more refined. Yeah, so we're able to bring in a set of colours and a set of behaviours that are not defined by lines. Yeah, so don't need out. Oh, good. I'll fix that. I've just noticed that I've got a weird little grey splodge there. But I'm not restricted to line work. I can use those strokes to bring in a really refined level of colour work. The other thing I can do, and I'll do this, and then you guys can crack on with it, and I'll come around and assist. If I go back to my paintbrush tool, I'm gonna do another duplicate of that pink. So I'm gonna paste as a new colour. Whoa, there they all are. I'm just going to bring this one up here slightly, and then I'm going to take it out this way. So I haven't got darker, I've just gone for a slightly desaturated value. So the value is not higher, it's just desaturated. Then I'm going to go with my paintbrush tool, and at the bottom of my paintbrush settings, let's make this a bit fatter just so it's easier to work with. The bottom of my paintbrush settings, I've got a repaint brush. Now the repaint brush is really cool because what it allows me to do is it will only paint what's already been painted. So it's not going to add new lines, it's only going to add content where content already exists. Which is a great way to now go in. I'll probably make my brush a little bit bigger because that brush looks really small. Let's go up a little bit. But what I'm thinking is to get some nice kind of smooth work on this. Notice how it's ignoring the line work. I want to get the smoothness right up on this actually. So it's ignoring the line work, it's focusing just on the colour work, and it's a great way to kind of bring in that next kind of dimension of colour. So I'm working with 3 different shades of pink, but all of them together are creating a really kind of nice, clean aesthetic. I might bring this a little bit higher over here actually. Oh, and the repaint tool, as well as allowing you to go in and paint colour only where colour's already been applied, as you can see it doing here. The other thing that the repaint tool's really, really nice for is if I go back and reactivate those strokes, the repaint tool's got its own contours. So if I need to adjust the lines on that repaint, yeah, if I need to go, oh, I'm not, like I've got that weird bit there, so I'm not really happy with that bit, I just want to kind of clean it up, I can. There you go, I can kind of pull it that way and just clean those lines up. So I can actually get a really, really refined level of detail. Just turn K off. Nice, clean, bold work where we're using the line art to set the template for the drawing, and then we're using the colour art layer to go in and actually refine it. Close the strokes, refine the characters. Now, this might seem like a bit of an arse-ache to do at the moment because you're doing drawn pose animations. You know, that's a lot of drawings to do that kind of colour work. And I don't dispute that. It is a lot of drawings to do. But next week, when we start looking at rigging and asset-based animation, this is a game changer. To be able to do that level of clean refinement on a shape, knowing that the colour exists in perpetuity, so it'll exist all the way through every frame, that we can expose and rig and move a drawing over time with relative ease. You know, there's some really kind of cool stuff we're going to do here. So, what I'd like you to do is have a crack at this. See if you can take this level of refinement that we've just played around with the octopus tentacle, go back to your squid layer and start to apply colour. So start to work on the colour layer using the paint, repaint and the paint behind and the fill brush, and start to fill in that character and get it as clean as possible. So you guys crack on with that. I'm going to stop this recording now because I don't want you to see the preview. I don't want the video to have the preview stuff of next week because that will look weird. But I have recorded everything I've done, so you can go. I'll upload all this. You'll be able to follow the YouTube videos and kind of refresh your brain if there's anything you've forgotten. So I'm going to stop the recording here, and then we'll sort of pick up this work and try and get this shot refined before the end of the session.